June 22nd, 2022. It's 1 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order. So the first thing that we need to do today is add an item to the agenda for an issue that's come out since we posted our agenda. So we're going to add what I'm calling a board review of the one license per location rule. This is likely to involve an executive session because we're going to need to have some confidential attorney-client communications. So I think we should add it, after the staff recommendations and before our discussion and vote. So last week I spoke a little bit about non-plastic packaging and the waiver process. Again, our packaging waiver form is live on our website. I forgot to mention last week that if you are going to seek a waiver, you can speed up our review process tremendously if you can supply the board with a physical sample of the packaging for which you're seeking a waiver. If you don't have this, we'll do our best to get our hands on a sample, but it's just a lot easier for us if we can kind of physically handle the packaging. And a reminder, packaging for flower does not need to be in child-resistant packaging. So, it's got to be tear-resistant or deter a child under 5 years of age from opening the package. So, it really shouldn't be all that difficult to come up with packaging for flower that doesn't use plastic. So I would say don't bother submitting a waiver request for flower packaging. Just really look for something that's compliant. With respect to inventory tracking, I've noted in the past that our inventory tracking is going to look a little bit different than many other states. It's much more in the vein of Washington, where licensees are going to have to report to the board at regular intervals about their inventory and how it's moving through the supply chain. We will be analyzing that data and looking for irregularities and suspicious activity with the help of a data analytics vendor. The RFP window for our inventory tracking platform officially closed. So we will be reviewing bids and getting our system up and running as quickly as possible. And then, once our contract is in place, we will put out specific guidance on how to comply with our inventory tracking requirements. But in the meantime, all licensees have to track and keep detailed records of their inventory as required by our rules. We will be auditing these records, and you need to be able to account for how much product you have, where it's coming from, and where it's moving to. You will be able to use third-party inventory tracking software to help facilitate this. Ideally, though, your third-party software would be able to interface directly with our reporting management platform through an API. And unfortunately, we just don't have that contract in place yet, so we really can't help direct the industry as to which inventory tracking software will be compatible. But for what it's worth, we did require that our platform be Salesforce-based. And just again, picking up on a point from last week, illegal inversion of product is one of the most serious regulatory violations and can lead to a revocation or suspension of your license. And of course, it is a federal crime if this inversion is crossing state lines. We do want your genetics in this market, but it's a very serious red flag if on day one you have a lot of harvested flower you're trying to enter into this market. I think last point before we move to the agenda is that our window for pre-qualification is officially closed. So we had a couple of them come in recently, but just a reminder that is closed. Other than that, we just need to approve the minutes from our last meeting on June 15th. Julie and Kyle, have you had a chance to review those?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Great. So, Bryn, we were getting a lot of questions just about what our various application statuses mean and what communications the board will kind of make when a application is moving. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind reviewing some of that information for us.
Sure, I'd be glad to. So, David, if you will pass me that little thingy. Um, so I have the very simple flow chart that describes kind of the life cycle of an application. But hold on a second. Wow, that's small. Got a little bit bigger. So this flow chart should kind of describe the steps that are involved, both for an applicant in submitting their application and responding to the board's requests for more information, and also the process that our staff take as we are reviewing that application and prompting the applicant to pay their fees or provide us with additional information. So the blue box on this flow chart is the application status, and the text underneath is a summary of what is happening when your application is in that status. So hopefully this will provide some clarity for people as we talk about the various stages that our applications are in, and also provide some context for the data that we present in the application register each week. So once an application is submitted, that is really step one. That means the applicant has submitted an application through our online application portal. And the only thing that happens at that stage is that the applicant will be prompted to pay their application fee. And that application fee will not necessarily have to be paid by social equity applicants, but there is a process by which social equity applicants avoid paying the application fee ultimately. Those applications are then switched to receive status on the very first business day after the applicant submits their application. So not a whole lot of difference between submitted and received, but it means that staff have acknowledged the application has been submitted and we've switched your status. Following status is in review. And this a whole lot of things happen when the application is in review. So the first thing that happens is staff are conducting their initial review of the application to determine what the priority status is. So an analysis is being done if the application qualifies as an economic empowerment application or a social equity application. Staff are reviewing the contents of the application, the various uploads and submissions, and everything that has been provided by the applicant. This is the stage at which the applicant will get notice that they are to click on a link to go to CSI, which is our background check vendor. So they are prompted to both pay that the fee associated with the background check and go to the portal for CSI to submit the information that CSI needs in order to conduct the background check. This is also the phase at which staff are conducting interviews of applicants that are seeking either social equity business status or some individual social equity applicants, depending on the criteria for which they're seeking social equity. Staff are conducting interviews of each of the principals and owners and controllers of these either business applicants or just the individuals associated with an individual application. The following status is incomplete. So this is once the staff have reviewed the application, they've conducted the interview, the applicant's been sent to CSI. This is when staff have put together a list of information that is missing from the application and sent to the applicant an RFI or a request for information. That is, an RFI really is a complete list of what is insufficient about the application. Why is it that your application is not complete? And each individual thing that is missing or incomplete, and instructions on how to sufficiently complete their application for us to finish reviewing it. And just one note that I'll make here is that the board has not received a single application initially that is complete. Every application that we've received initially has been incomplete in one manner or another. So once the RFI goes out, prompting the applicant to provide additional information and explaining how to provide that additional information and what would be considered sufficient, the applicant is directed to resubmit their application through the portal. So once the applicant resubmits their application or updates their application through the portal, the application is considered resubmitted. So at this stage, staff is reviewing, doing a further review of the new or updated information contained in the application. And then once that initial staff review is complete, the application moves on to a second layer of staff review. So there are really two distinct layers of staff review that are going on once an application has been resubmitted after the request for information went out. So once that second layer of staff review is complete, that is the time that staff have determined that the application is complete. And that's when the application goes on the list that is submitted to the board with a recommendation for approval or denial. So once that happens, then the status is pending CCB review. So the other things that happen during pending CCB review are the board receives that list of recommendations in advance of the board meeting. And then, as we all know, the board will vote on the various staff recommendations at their regular board meeting. So that's when we move to approved. There are situations in which an application can go from pending CCB review back to a prior status, like if the board needs more information from an applicant that staff did not identify, then it could be that an application kind of moves backwards in the process. I don't believe that that has happened yet, but that is a possibility. So once the board takes their vote at their regular meeting, if applications are approved at the board meeting, a few things can happen. We've moved into approved status. If that application is approved pending further action from the applicant, for example, if an applicant has submitted a detailed insurance quote as a part of their application, but they haven't secured that policy, the staff will send a notification to the applicant saying, you've submitted something sufficient for the board to approve your license, but before we actually issue your license, you need to submit evidence that you have established insurance coverage. That's as an example. So this is when applicants get a list of what they need to do, any remaining outstanding items that they need to complete before the license is issued. And also, if the applicant is in a municipality with a local control commission, this is when staff send information about that approved applicant to the local control commission, and then we await their decision. This is also when the applicant is directed to pay their local fee and any license fees that the applicant may owe. And then lastly, the very last stage is the license stage. And so once the applicant has paid any fees that they are responsible for, and the board has received approval from the local control commission, if one exists in the applicant's municipality, that's when staff notify the applicant that their license and their cannabis establishment ID card are ready for them to download. So that is kind of the flow chart for the process. I'll note a couple of things. As we all know, there are some applicants that are requiring additional staff time, sort of some hand holding through the process and some special guidance from our staff. We are getting approximately 30 to 40 emails a day regarding people's applications. And that is questions about how to complete their application, questions about the status of their application. That doesn't include the emails that we're getting to individual staff members. So that's just kind of a picture of what is coming into our general inboxes. And staff are also fielding about 10 to 30 calls a day on applications. So the board staff is providing quite a bit of technical support, I think you could say, to many applicants. And I just wanted to remind everybody listening that the Agency of Commerce and Community Development is going to be administering a technical assistance program for our social equity applicants, and also the grants and loans program that will allow social equity applicants to have access to funding from the Cannabis Business Development Fund. And that portion of our social equity program, the technical assistance and the funding, is not yet in place. We had hoped it would be ready a little bit sooner than it has been, but it is not ready yet. So ACCD has put out an RFP for a vendor to administer those portions of the social equity program. And their anticipated start date for when there will be access to this technical support and the funding is August 1st. So just a reminder that though the board is doing, I think, some amount of technical assistance right now for all applicants, that there will be additional support available for social equity applicants this summer. So having said that, unless there are any questions from the board, I will move on to the license register for your review.
Can I just ask one question? Is there any particular area that is a trend in where applications are incomplete, or is it sort of just all over the board?
My perspective is that it's really all over the map.
Okay.
I think that there have been times in the beginning, kind of before we've developed some of our guidance, that there have been trends. I'd say now it really varies.
Okay, thank you.
I guess more of a comment than a question. I'm sure there's some folks listening that might think, oh, this technical assistance isn't coming until August, and you know, we're here. We're not till August. So what's the value for social equity applicants or licensees once, now that they have a license, and seeking that, because things didn't really line up how we wanted to. But I think that technical and business assistance will cover business planning, business development for short-term and long-term success, as well as cultivation coaching and the likes. So that technical assistance isn't designed to just get your application to this license status, but to ensure that you are a successful business moving forward. So I just want to make that clear.
Reapply, for example.
Absolutely.
If you're applying for a next tier up because your business has grown, that
Right.
will all be there.
Or just making sure that you can keep going.
Bryn, is there a way for an applicant to kind of easily know what phase in the pipeline they're in, short of calling the board or emailing us?
That information is available in the portal. So if they are to log in to their to the application portal, they can see what status they're in.
Do they get some sort of
Yep.
notification email if their status changes or anything like that? Okay. So not for every, but for some is what we were just told. Just meaning different buckets, not different applicants. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Bryn. Any Julie, Kyle, any other questions for Bryn before we move on?
Nope. Thank you, Bryn.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll move on to
Great. Well,
the,
Bryn, so now you can show us kind of where these, in real time, where things stand.
great. So starting as always with pre-qualification, as we know, this pre-qualification window has closed. This is probably the second to last time we'll have pre-qualification applications to approve. Today we have 7 up for that are recommended for pre-qualification. As always, these submissions have demonstrated compliance with board rule, and staff has determined them to be appropriate for pre-qualification. We've approved, to date, we've approved 203 applicants for pre-qualification. This will bring us up to 210 if the board votes to approve the list this week. So we've got submission 264 for retail, submission 474 for a tier 2 manufacturing, submission 537 for tier 2 outdoor cultivation, submission 568 for tier 2 mixed use cultivation, submission 573 for tier 1 outdoor cultivation, submission 574 for tier 1 outdoor cultivation, and submission 575 for tier 1 outdoor cultivation. So likely that we will have a few straggler pre-qualification applicants next week.
Just very quickly before, I know license applications are probably why we have 80 some odd people joining the meeting, but taking a step back, and 210 pre-qualification businesses, that's members of a part of those businesses, a lot of that like it's just an incredible amount of work that our staff has done to get 210 prospective business, and folks involved in those businesses, to give them some type of assurance that they, with a complete full application, have a place in this market potentially, I think is just an incredible effort. So thanks to everybody.
Yeah, and I would just add also that, pre-qualification closing, again, pre-qualification is not a prerequisite of licensure. It was a process that we created to kind of help ease, people that may have criminal history records or things that might disqualify them from participating in the market, give them some comfort that their license will be approved if they get pre-qualified. There's also benefits to getting bank accounts and insurance and things like that. But just a reminder that, just because pre-qualification closed and if you didn't get pre-qualified, you can still apply for an operating license.
Thanks, Bever.
Okay, I will move on to the license applications. So as always, these numbers are up to date as of 2 days ago, so Monday. Today, the board has 13 licenses up for recommendation for approval, or 13 applications up for approval. 10 of those are tier 1 or 2 outdoor and mixed cultivators, and 3 are tier 1 or 2 indoor cultivators. So you can see at the bottom of the page, it's a little difficult to see here, but we've got about 140 in either submitted or received status. We've got 80 in incomplete status, 13 in resubmitted status, and then 13 up for review today.
And how many, does it say on there how many we've approved thus far?
It doesn't, but we've approved 27,
Okay.
and that is, we should add that.
Yeah. We need a running total.
Yes. Okay, so I'll just quickly go through the businesses that are recommended for approval. As always, these applicants have demonstrated compliance with all of the requirements for obtaining a license that's contained in both our board rules and in statute. So first up, we have Green Mountain Integrity, a tier 1 outdoor cultivator. Ripple Communications, tier 1 outdoor cultivator. Crystal Mountain LLC, tier 1 outdoor cultivator. LB Farm LLC, tier 1 mixed cultivator. Emerald Rose Farms LLC, tier 1 indoor cultivator. Emerald Visions LLC, tier 1 indoor cultivator. High Horse Weedworks LLC, tier 1 outdoor cultivator. Snug Farm, tier 1 outdoor cultivator. Split Acres Sungrown LLC, tier 1 outdoor cultivator. Lost Lake Cannabis LLC, tier 1 outdoor cultivator. Happy Valley Products, tier 1 mixed cultivator. Top One Company, tier 1 indoor cultivator. And Fort Dowd Growers Collective LLC, tier 1 mixed cultivator. All of these applicants are recommended for licensure by the staff. Oops.
Great. And were there social equity as well?
There are. So here's our numbers as of Monday for social equity license applications. 6 in submitted or received status, 3 are under review. The bulk of them are in incomplete status or resubmitted status. And we have 2 up for board review today. So we have 2 recommendations today for social equity status. both of these applicants, staff is recommending approval of social equity status because each of these applicants meets the criteria for social equity individual applicant as defined in board rule. And we have 2 recommendations today for social equity status denial. And the staff is recommending denial of social equity status for these 2 applicants as they don't meet the criteria for social equity individual applicant as defined in board rule. So I think that before the board votes on the register this week, you have one other kind of unique issue to address that the chair mentioned at the outset of the meeting for the agenda change. And this is really a unique issue that an applicant has raised in the process of their license application. And this applicant has presented an issue that implicates the 1 license per location rule as set out in statute. So I think this would be a good time for the board to address that unique issue.
So it's my understanding that this issue may implicate, confidential attorney-client communications, as well as, is probably, our decision may or may not lead to litigation. So it's my understanding that we should do the discussion of this in executive session, and also that we wanted to hear a little bit more about the social equity denials, the reasoning for that before we vote on that as well in executive session. So is this, Bryn, a good time for us to kind of turn things into an executive session and then come back and do our votes on both of those issues?
Yes, this is a good time for that.
Okay. Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
I move that the CCB go into executive session to consider confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body, and that executive session is required because premature general public knowledge regarding such communications would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, well, I've said 10 minutes, both of the last 2 times we went into an executive session. It was more like 20 minutes. So I don't want to cut us short. Why don't we say that this one will be 20 minutes? And so, Nelly, if you could put up our away message, our executive session away message, and we will plan on being back from executive session at 10 till. Nelly, I think people should be coming back any second now.
Yes, they were having some technical difficulties joining, but I think we have that sorted.
Okay.
I'm working on figuring that out now.
All right.
Oh, good, they're back. Wonderful.
Great. And are we still recording, Kimberly?
Can you guys hear us now?
We can hear you now, yeah.
Yes.
Technical difficulties, everybody, sorry.
Yeah, and sorry again for the extended executive session, but we're back. We didn't, of course, take any votes in executive session. We are going to do that now. And so why don't we start, well, I should just note for the record, it's 2:11 p.m. And maybe we can start with the kind of just the approval of social equity status, licensing, and pre-qualification.
I move that the board accept each of the recommendations for pre-qualification, social equity status, and licensing approval as presented to us by staff in this meeting.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then we have this other issue as to whether or not one of our applicants violates the one license per location rule. So is there a motion for that?
I move that the board has decided that the application number 467 meets the one location rule as submitted.
Okay.
Seconded.
So I think just because this vote might have a split decision, we should just do it by roll. So why don't we just start with, was there any further discussion about this?
No.
No.
And is that all right if we do it by roll?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we start, Kyle? Julie?
Aye.
And sorry, just the motion is that it does meet the one license per location rule?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm a no on that. But I think it carries. Okay. Why don't we move down the agenda, and I think all we have left is public comment. So we'll do this the kind of same way we always do, which is if you join via the link, please just raise your virtual hand. We'll start with those folks in the order you raise your hand, and then if we have anyone who joined by phone, we'll move to you next. So Nelly, could you just help with the order?
Absolutely. Dave is first.
So it's really unclear what was discussed at executive session right now, and I think it would be helpful for the market to understand a little better what the decision was and what the factors were. So I'll leave that for you guys to think about, and maybe you can update us at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Benjamin.
Benjamin, are you there? Nelly, do you want to move on if there is anyone else?
There is no one else currently raising their hand at this moment.
Okay. Well, if you join via phone, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to make a public comment by hitting *6 on your phone.
We just had Jared raise his hand.
Yes,
Jared.
you hear me?
Yes.
Tell me if my math is right. With over 500 applications waiting for approval, and you're approving 10 or 12 or whatever a week, that means that you won't get through this before the end of the year. So there's a practical matter you discussed today that that you're going to need to have the insurance in place before the licenses are issued. The insurance is running $3,000 to $5,000 per year, and it's term, and they're not taking payments. So that'll be a hardship to pay for your insurance if you can't participate as a grower, for instance, until next year. So you're paying for insurance that you're not needing for another year or, 10 months.
Is that the end of your comment, Jared?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else with a public comment? Feel free to just raise your virtual hand or hit *6 to unmute yourself. All right. Well, I guess I'll close the public comment section. I just would say that all the insurance companies that I've reached out to, let's let you decide the date that you start your insurance coverage. And so you don't have to pay for insurance that you're not using if you're unlicensed. And they'll give you a letter saying that you've been pre-approved for insurance, but the effective date would be the date of your licensure. I guess that's it for the agenda. Julie, Kyle, any concluding thoughts before we sign off?
I'll add to your statement, Pepper, that Jared, you're conflating our pre-qualification numbers from our actual license application numbers. We have not received 500 full license applications. So, and it's a lot more complicated than just trying to do quick division. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, then I will adjourn this meeting and we'll see you all again next Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Bye, Julie. Bye, Kyle. Bye, Bryn. Bye, David.